What is going on, everybody? It's the Fountain here for XFL Week 5 recap analysis, power rankings, and predictions for Week 6. We are halfway through the season. One team still is undefeated. 4 teams, of course, win. 4 teams, of course, lose. One team, in my opinion, is absolutely out of the playoff running, especially if next week the number 1 team in the West wins their game. They are absolutely done. And one team we thought was going to be running away with the East falls and falters and is your dud of the week. And we have dud of the week, team of the week, player of the week, and so much more. But if it wasn't but as we get into this, let's get into game 1 before we do anything else. The Houston Roughnecks beat the Seattle Dragons 32-23, but this game had our first controversy of the season. The Houston Roughnecks had the ball with about 5 seconds left. PJ Walker takes a knee. It was 4th down in Houston's territory. They are only up 9 at this time, so the clock should have stopped at 2 seconds. Unfortunately, the referees left. You had the announcers or the commentators going ballistic, like, hey, you should stop the game. Hey, you should stop the refs. This game is still not over. And the Seattle Dragons, who could have had a one-shot chance to try and win inside the game, which would have been, it would have been far worse if this would have been 32, like 24, 25, 26 or higher, and it was a one-score game. And the Seattle Dragons only needed to score 6 points or more, like 6 points to win, or even score a field goal. That would have been worse. But the XFL did come out during the second game and say, hey, this is our bad. We screwed up. We apologize. This shouldn't have happened. And the guy who was in charge of officiating for that game has been reassigned. So the XFL doing something we all know the NFL would never do. They would never own up like this to the fans. They might say to the teams, but they would never say this to the fans and just say, hey, this guy, he's out of here. He's reassigned. BJ Daniels for the Seattle Dragons went 14-22 for 144 yards but 0 touchdowns. The Seattle Dragons, this game looked like it was going to go Seattle's way. They were up, I believe, 14-0, or they had a 2-score lead. Coming close to halftime, they had a 2-score lead, but Houston tied it back up. They tied it up before we went to halftime. And if you let Houston back into a game as you're putting the brakes on them, you're going to end up ruining the day. BJ Daniels had 30 yards on 10 attempts for 2 touchdowns, and Williams had 7 attempts for 28 yards and a touchdown to lead the Seattle Dragons. PJ Walker, another fantastic game, 27 attempts, 38 attempts for 27 completions, 351 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he did throw 2 picks. The very first play of the game was, that's later game. That's later game, but no. 2 picks, so PJ Walker was not perfect. Cam Phillips, of course, 13 targets, 10 receptions, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Holly was the recipient of the other touchdown. Butler also had 2 touchdowns on 12 attempts for 52 yards. PJ Walker, of course, tried to get the running game going himself, but it was minus 5 yards. The Seattle Dragons, this was a good game. This was an awesome game for both these teams. It sucks to see the Seattle Dragons. They're pretty much done. They are 1-4 going into Week 6. And honestly, the only way Seattle even probably has a chance to stay in this game and in the last 5 weeks of the season is if Houston either loses this week coming up, and Seattle wins. Seattle has to win out practically, and Houston has to lose out. And that means losing to Seattle in their second game in Seattle next time. The defense, we had ourselves a good defense. We had no defensive battle here, really, other than 2 picks by Myers and Martin for the Seattle Dragons. But the Houston Roughnecks eked out a win with controversy, as I stated before. They are 5-0, and really, in my opinion, only need one more win to assure their first place finish and assure their spot in the XFL playoffs and being the first team named to the XFL playoffs. The New York Guardians go into Dallas and they hand the Renegades an 18-point loss. Man, the New York Guardians 4 weeks ago looked like a team that could be a good team in this league. Then after week 2 happened, they looked like a terrible team. Then week 3 happened, they looked terrible, even worse. Matt McGloin was not the quarterback for them. They were getting unnecessary penalty after unnecessary penalty, almost having one person getting ejected. This was a team that was destined to fail. Then we get to last week, and Matt McGloin out. Matt McGloin should never see the light of day again on the field. Matt McGloin was replaced by Brandon Silvers. And Brandon Silvers comes in. Not Brandon Silvers. I'm sorry, wrong team. Luis Perez. Luis Perez comes in, especially in the first week 3. He came in a little late to try and help that team win. He came in garbage time. There was no way they were winning that week 3 game against St. Louis. But Luis Perez comes in. They win last week. They come here to Dallas. They win again. 16 completions on 30 attempts for 80 yards, 1 touchdown. He did throw a pick. Lance Dunbar did try a pass late in the game to try and get a trick play going. Didn't work out. Philip Nelson is not the quarterback for this team. They are lucky that Dallas is 2-3 right now. They need Landry Jones or somebody on that caliber. Philip Nelson is not that guy. They need to weather the storm, and whether they win next week or they don't, they got to win out after that. They need to win week 7, 8, 9, 10. They got 4 games after next week that they're going to have to win if they want to be in the playoffs. Because the Wildcats, which we'll talk about in a bit, are creeping up. They're not there yet, but they're creeping up. Cameron Payne had 25 yards. They had 12 points. But here's the thing. None of those 12 points were on the offense. I believe they had 2 field goals, and they had the second ever return for a touchdown from a kickoff. And that's where they got the 12 points. They didn't get anything on offense. It was all New York from the start. Philip Nelson just didn't look like a player who wanted to be there. He doesn't look like he's good enough to be on this team. Throwing 2 picks, only getting 49 yards. While the rushing game didn't even garner 50 yards. Garnered around 50 yards, that was it. Now, the New York Guardians didn't do much else on the running game either, even though Williams got a touchdown running. Victor had 58 yards on 15 attempts. Stockton 45 attempts for 41 yards. Cook with 9 attempts for 26 yards. And Perez did get 18 yards on 2 attempts. Of course, your only touchdown other than from them was Pearson from Luis Perez. So this was not a touchdown battle at all. This game was more of, I believe this was a lot of kicking in this game. Now, on the defensive side, of course, you had a couple of interceptions from Mueller and Johnson for the New York Guardians. The Renegades did get 1, and it was from Hawkins, but this was definitely not a game that if you wanted to see a really, really good football game, this was not it. It wasn't a bad football game, but the Dallas Renegades have got to do something. If they want to stay in this, if LA plays as good as LA did, and we'll talk about them, that was the final game of the week. If we have to see what they went through, if they play like they did this week and last week, even though they lost last week, if they win next week and the week after that, and LA keeps winning, Dallas might be on the looking in. And Dallas, for whatever reason, when this thing started, was pegged as a favorite to win the entire thing, probably because of Landry Jones's reputation as being a member of backup to Ben Roethlisberger of the Steelers. I don't know. I don't see it. Landry Jones is good, but he's probably not good enough to get the Renegades back. Talk about shocker of the week. The dud team of the week, the most disappointing team of the week is the St. Louis Battlehawks. Cardell Jones, Tyree Jackson, and the DC Defenders defend the DMV, beating the St. Louis Battlehawks 15-6. St. Louis couldn't get anything going on this on Sunday afternoon. They couldn't get anything. This team looked lost. They've had 3 games. They had 4 games this year so far before week 5 that they looked like they could win every one of those games, and they won 3 out of those 4 games. The only game they lost was to the undefeated DAL Houston Roughnecks, who that was a really close game. 1 or 2 mistakes, and that could have been their win, and they could be 5-0, 4-0 going into this week. This week, they tried the running game multiple times. They got stopped twice on 4th and 1, running up the middle. Even though when you're watching this game on your television, on your TV, on your smart device, wherever you're watching it, and you see DC pretty much have the entire box covered, like have so many defenders in the box, St. Louis tries to run twice and gets stuffed both times. They had no touchdowns. They had two field goals, and that's all they got. Jordan Talman went 15 of 25 for 174 yards and nothing else. They had almost 0 running game. Jones with 13 attempts for, 13 attempts for 70 yards. Michael with 12 attempts for 69 yards, and Jordan Talman with 5 attempts for 31 yards and Ford for 3 attempts for 3 yards. But the DC Defenders did not come out of this unscathed, because Cardell Jones threw 1 interception. The very beginning of the first quarter, 1 interception, he was out of there. 2 passing attempts, 0 for 0, as 1 was picked off, and they brought in the backup Jackson. Jackson went 9 attempts for 14 attempts for 9 and completed 9 for 39 yards. 1 touchdown, but that wasn't the story of the game. The story of the game for the DC Defenders was their running game. Presley, becomes the 3rd player in XFL history to rush for 100-plus yards, as he rushed for 15 attempts in 107 yards, 0 touchdowns on any of them. Humphrey with 15 attempts for 37 yards. Jackson with 7 attempts and 32 yards. Tompkins 1 attempt for 28 yards. And Eli Rogers, which they exploited the run option, the wide receivers coming from one side to the other. I can't remember what that actually called. They did it twice for 25 yards, and I think if they wanted to, they could have got a little bit more out of that with Eli Rogers and got the St. Louis Battlehawks. I think the St. Louis Battlehawks are going to have to learn to adjust the running game, run-stopping game, because they got run all over by the DC Defenders. And the DC Defenders haven't been really a big running team, but on this day, they were the running team of it all. Not much else happened in this game because, as you can see, 15-6. It was a defensive running battle that the DC Defenders ran all over. But Kenny Robinson, the college-eligible guy who is going to be in the NFL draft in a couple weeks, got his 2nd pick on the season, and that was what benched Cardell Jones. So this guy, Kenny Robinson, is going to be the benchmark for the XFL players getting from the XFL back to the NFL or getting drafted to the NFL. If you don't want to... Now, here's the thing. For anybody's like, oh, Trevor Lawrence should have went to the XFL instead of going back to Clemson to play next year. Give me a break. The dude is playing for a Power 5 conference team that could be in the national championship every single year that he's there. So he's not going to do that. Guys like Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa's brother, who knows how good he's going to be. If you're going to Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, if you're going to those teams and you're a starter on that team, are you going to give up having a chance to play in the national championship to going to make a little bit of money in the XFL? No. Kenny Robinson is a special case because he got fucked over because of some academic problems in West Virginia. Nobody from those schools are going to go and say, hey, I'm going to give up this big opportunity to have so many more people see me on a national basis. Yes, the XFL is spring league, and maybe, just maybe, when their college days are over, maybe they want to get a little bit pro time before they go to the NFL, which I don't think that's many is going to do that. But if you have a guy who, like Joe Burrow was sitting at Ohio State for years. He didn't do anything because they didn't need him. So he transferred out from LSU. Here's the thing. What if LSU wouldn't have been an option? What if LSU wouldn't have been somewhere that Joe Burrow could go? He would be a perfect candidate to go to the XFL and show that he could shine in professional football. Somebody who wants to transfer out of a school, maybe Tua, who is in, I believe, what was it, Alabama? Maybe Tua's brother, Tulua, maybe he doesn't want to sit behind and be a backup. Maybe he doesn't want to be stuck in college, and he wants to go make a little bit of money going to play in the XFL. That can be possible. But you're not going to see a major starter guy from like Alabama, West Virginia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, or any of these big schools. A smaller school, like maybe a Nevada or a UAB, or one of those schools where somebody feels like they have the talent, but they're just in a situation that they're not going to be able to show their talents. If the XFL sticks around for season 2, which it sounds like from a lot of things that it's going to happen, ticket sales are doing pretty good. Merchandise sales they can't keep merchandise on the rack. Gameplay on the field is fantastic. We're gonna explain to you in exactly a few minutes how good a game could be, because we had the best and highest scoring game in the XFL in the nightcap. But if Kenny Robinson goes and gets a moderate high draft pick because he played in the XFL and showed that he can be one hell of a fucking player for a defensive team, this is going to open the eyes to a lot of those people in the transfer portal who want to go play somewhere, but because they have to sit out a year or whatever else they have to do, they go, well, I could stay here and I could wait a year to play, or I can go make not as much as I'm going to make in the NFL, but I can go to the XFL, make some money, while also, because Kenny Robinson is also finishing his schooling, if I'm correct, I read that somewhere. The XFL and the St. Louis Battlehawks are helping this guy to get his degree, which that's fucking awesome. But if Kenny Robinson gets drafted 7th pick, then it's going to get people who have this idea of wanting to go there just go, whoa, let's back up a little bit. Let's back off. It's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end of the season. Kenny Robinson is definitely a shining star spot in the St. Louis Battlehawks, but this was not their day. Now, the interesting thing about the XFL's East Division right now, 1, 2, and 3 are all 3 and 2. The Tampa Bay Vipers have a chance to be up in there, but only being 2 and 3 and only be a game behind, or falling to 1 and 4 and becoming a last ditch out, but still technically being in it. See, the top spot in the East is wide the fuck open. The top spot in the West is always locked up. That's going to Houston. Even if Houston lost the last 5 games of the season, it would be 5-5, but I don't think that's happening. Houston might lose a game or two. Hell, Houston might not even play PJ Walker and their starters in game 10, and that's going to be where they lose their first and only game. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But getting off the tangent here, St. Louis falls to the DC Defenders, and what was not the best game, not the worst game I've ever seen, but it wasn't the best game of the week. This was your game of the week, the LA Wildcats versus the Tampa Bay Vipers, 41-34. Tampa Bay could not win this game. They go to 1 and 4, and LA goes to 2 and 3. They are still in the hunt for the second spot in the playoffs, and if they keep creeping up, They're going to pass up the Dallas Renegades, and they're going to go to Houston in the championship weekend to take on the Houston Roughnecks. This game was a shootout from the effing start. Both of these teams just going out there scoring. This was the game where the first play of the game, Josh Johnson passes the interception that he would throw in this game. It was the very first play of the game. Very first pass. Then, when we got to the second half, I believe it was the second half, it was the beginning of the fourth quarter, Taylor Cornelius, one of his 2 interceptions was tossed in the very first play of either the first quarter, the third quarter, or the fourth quarter. So a little verse right there. Taylor Cornelius went 22 out of 34 for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns plus 2 picks. There was no 100-yard rusher in this game, unfortunately. Cornelius had 45 yards on 7 attempts. Smith had 69 yards on 24 attempts. Patrick had 7 attempts with 23 yards and a touchdown. Cornelius, of course, ran a touchdown in. And Folston with 2 attempts for 5 yards. Now, Josh Johnson is your player of the week with 20 attempts, 36 attempts with 28 completions, 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw 1 pick, but he did score a rushing touchdown I think he did. No, he didn't. 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns on the day. And what was your game of the week? The dud of the week was St. Louis for how disappointing they played this week. Jordan Ta'amo did not look like himself. The entire team did not look like themselves. This was, by far, the best game we had. And look at it this way. 2 1-3 teams. 2 teams that know they had to win or they are done. Well, LA needed to win or they were done. And Tampa Bay still had a chance at being 1-4. Let's see here. So, offensively, heck of a game here. This is one of those games, and the Elimination Chamber was going on halfway through this, the majority of this game. I had to watch back and forth between both of these because I also cover the Elimination Chamber on this channel. But I had to watch back and forth on this stuff, and what I saw in this game, which I watched most of this, because the only thing that was left was that I really watched was the triple threat, the 3-on-1 elimination chain, the 3-on-1 Intercontinental title match and the Elimination Chamber match itself for the females and a couple other matches that didn't matter. But I watched this mostly, and when I went to commercials, I'd look at that, I'd listen to that and have a look at it when this was going on. But this thing was one of those ones that you did not want to turn away. This game could have went down to either team. Tampa Bay had the lead, same like LA would come back. LA would get the lead, Tampa Bay would come back, and it was just back and forth. This was fantastic football. I would like to see, as we get down the last 5 weeks, I would like to see more games like this. 75 points between the two. The most points scored in an XFL game in its short 5-week history. Let's see here. Priest still picked off the interception for the Tampa Bay Vipers that started off the game. Not much else happened there. And then Pocho and Howard for the LA Wildcats. This was, again, the best game of the week. There was, I believe, an ejection in this game. Maybe two. Anyway, that was the St. Louis Battlehawks game, if I'm correct. One of those games. There was a couple ejections this week. We did have a controversy. But now, let's talk about everyone's favorite thing, the power rankings for this week. Your Week 5 power rankings. As you see, starting at number 8 is the Tampa Bay Vipers. A very hard-fought loss, but they have dropped all the way back down to 8 where they have been most of the weeks. The Seattle Dragons drop again down to number 7 after having a game where BJ Daniels tried, but BJ Daniels just wasn't enough to beat the Houston Roughnecks. The Dallas Renegades are at number 6. They need somebody else other than Philip Nelson. Philip Nelson is not going to work for this team. It's just too much for them, and it sucks to see them down this far, even though it's kind of funny how everyone picked them to be the best team in the league before this league even started. And now they're just dropping, and I don't see them winning next week as well. LA Wildcats pop up to number 5. I would love to put them in the top 4. I just can't put them there yet because they are 2 and 3. They need to, if they win next week and one of the top 4 loses, they're definitely going to be up there. As I've said before, I think when we get to it, if Dallas can't get back on the right foot and LA just keeps going up to where they need to be, they need to win more than one game in a row. They won a game in week 3, lost last week, won this week. They cannot lose next week. They need to win. St. Louis drops from the number 2 position all the way down to number 4 after that pitiful performance against the DC Defenders. I couldn't drop them any further than that. They are 3 and 2 as well, so I couldn't drop them any further. DC pops all the way back up to number 3 after taking what looked to be the second best team in the league and dropping them on their heads, tying the East up in the top of the East up in the 3-way tie. Now, DC is your number 1 team. When you look at the rankings and you see, the standings, and you see DC above both St. Louis and New York, simple. DC beat both St. Louis and New York. However, I can't put them above New York right now just because how good New York looked this week. And just, New York it looked good. Perez looks like he's got this team on the right foot. If New York comes back in this week coming up and just bloodies whoever when they play, they're going to be one hell of a dogfight going into the last 5 weeks of the season. And of course, number 1 is the Houston Roughnecks. Who is going to stop this team? They have gone through 5 different teams in 5 weeks. They've handled adversity. They were down 14 this week. And they just keep coming back and they keep winning. What can you do to stop the Houston Roughnecks? PJ Walker could be your runaway MVP. I say Cam Phillips should be on there as well. But PJ Walker is your is definitely going to be a player that you have to look forward to. He is, of course, at the beginning of this week's game, week 5, he did pass 1,000 yards passing. I can totally see as we get through week 10 him passing 2,000 yards. So look out for that. Here is your top 5. Here is your 8 for this week. The power rankings for week 5 going into week 6. What do you think of these 8 guys? So, and we'll get into the week schedule here and my predictions for it. So we are coming into week 6 of the XFL. We have 4 games coming to you. Saturday at 2 o'clock on ABC. It's the Houston Roughnecks going into MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Guardians. New York Guardians, of course, are 2-0 at home. But they are going up against the almighty Houston Roughnecks. I don't see them winning this game whatsoever. Houston is going to win this one. I feel like this one's not going to be... It's going to feel like this is... When Houston faced Tampa Bay, we all thought, that's going to be a bludgeoning. They're going to kill these guys. I don't think... And we didn't see them going the way it did where they beat them. But it was a good game. I think we're going to see the same thing here, especially with Luis Perez playing as good as he is. But I just don't think New York has enough to beat the Houston Roughnecks. Houston wins this game 25-20. Tampa Bay versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. Unlike when DC lost to the LA Wildcats and we thought, last week they were going to go in against Tampa Bay, week 4 they were going to go in against Tampa Bay, and they were going to bounce back and be the dominant team. We knew them to be. Yeah, I don't see Tampa Bay doing this to St. Louis either, which is kind of funny how the top team in the East has a bad game, and then the very next game is a bounce back. It looks to be a bounce back against the Tampa Bay Vipers. This one should be another knockdown, drag-out type of game, and I'm going with the St. Louis Battlehawks to bounce back. So Jordan Ta'amu and that defense and that offense is going to bounce back and have a fantastic game. This one's going to be another shootout. This one's going to be 32-25 St. Louis. DC Defenders versus Dallas Renegades. I'm going with DC on this one. Philip Nelson, I just don't have any faith in this guy being somebody who could lead the Dallas Renegades to a win this week. So I'm going with on FS1, by the way. By the way, St. Louis versus Tampa Bay is not going to be on Fox. I believe Fox is having a big, huge, some kind of event going on. like something going on that they can't do it, and so is FS1. So FS2, if you can find an FS2 or go on YouTube and find the video, you will be able to find St. Louis and Tampa Bay. Now, Dallas and DC is on FS1, and I'm going with the DC Defenders. At home, they are going to beat the Dallas Renegades, and this one is going to be 25-12 DC. And then in the nightcap at 7 p.m. on ESPN2, we have the Seattle Dragons hosting the Los Angeles Wildcats. This one's going to be a toss-up for sure. This one I feel is going to be Tampa Bay LA all over again. Because I don't see this one being one of those ones that either one is a heavy favorite. Yes, LA won this past week. And Tampa and Seattle kind of means they have Brandon Silva. So this one should be a very, very good game. So I'm going to throw this one as a toss-up, and I'm going to say Seattle defends the layer and wins this game 25-19. Those are my predictions. Houston over New York, St. Louis over Tampa Bay, DC over Dallas, and Seattle over Los Angeles. Thank you for listening to this video. Hit that subscribe button, comment down below, like or dislike this video. Find me on Twitter at The France Club. Find me on twitch.tv/TheFranceClub. And I will see you guys tomorrow for All Elite Wrestling's AEW on TNT. Until then, I'm getting out of here. And you guys have a good one.